Novak Djokovic just broke the record for the most match wins in Wimbledon history. 3 days later, a 24-year-old beat him in straight sets and sent him home. And here's the strange part. That loss doesn't break the story of how he lasted this long. It's the proof. Last time, I told you Djokovic keeps winning because he stopped playing the game everyone else is playing. He stopped trying to be the fastest body on the court. He turned a sprint into chess. And then, a few days later, he walked onto center court against Jannik Sinner and lost 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. So did the theory just die on camera? A lot of people decided it did. You've seen the comment. You've probably typed some version of it yourself about somebody. 2 words, aged like milk. One match and the whole verdict flips. From immortal to finished. From the greatest of all time to a man who should have retired years ago. I want to show you why that's not just unkind. It's wrong. And not wrong in the way you defend someone you like. Wrong in the way a math error is wrong. Because this was never really about Djokovic. There is a younger, faster version of you coming for your spot. In your job, in your field, maybe in your own house. Maybe they've already arrived. And what happened at Wimbledon over 2 weeks is the clearest map anyone has ever drawn of how to hold that person off, and exactly where holding them off stops working. Let me catch you up fast, in case you missed the first part. Every competitor walks onto the court with 2 kinds of margin. There's physical margin, how fast you move, how hard you hit, how quickly you recover. Past a certain age, that line slides down. Nobody escapes it. And there's a second line, decision margin, how good your choices are, whether you read the point before it arrives, whether you spend your energy where it changes the score and nowhere else. That line is still climbing. Winning isn't about either line by itself. It's about keeping the sum of the 2 higher than the person across from you. Younger players have more of the first. Djokovic has built more of the second than anyone alive. So he stopped racing, because in a sprint, the faster body wins. And he started thinking, because in chess, the person who sees one move earlier beats the person who moves one step faster. Every single time. 3 things carry that second line. He reads patterns instead of reacting to reflexes. He treats his own emotions like fuel and refuses to waste any of it panicking. And he picks his moments. He'll let a point go to win a game, conserve on his serve, and detonate on the return. That's how, at 39, he beat Roman Safulin to reach 106 match wins at Wimbledon. 1 more than Roger Federer, the most of any man in the tournament's history. The men's record, to be exact, not the all-time mark across everyone who's ever played there. And notice how he got there. He didn't steamroll anyone. He dropped a set. He survived a first-set tiebreak. He looked, at stretches, every one of his 39 years. This wasn't a machine. This was a man solving one hard problem after another. Hold on to that, because it matters in a minute. Then came the quarterfinal. And this is the model at full stretch. 5 hours and 15 minutes against Felix Auger-Aliassime. The longest Wimbledon quarterfinal there had ever been. Djokovic said afterward he won it with, quote, a racket and a lot of heart. Watch that match and you are watching decision margin hold a 39-year-old body together long past the point the body wants to quit. The calm after a lost set. The intensity spent only where it moved the score. 5 hours and 15 minutes of refusing to panic. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. He walked off that court having spent something he could not get back. Not before the semifinal. Not in 3 days. And in that semifinal, he ran into Jannik Sinner. 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, straight sets, gone. So, is this where the theory dies? Look closer at how he lost, because this is the whole video. Djokovic did not collapse. He did not spray errors all over the court. Sinner served 16 aces. He hit 0 double faults. He faced exactly 1 break point the entire match, and he saved it with an ace. Djokovic didn't lose because he suddenly got old on a Tuesday. He lost because the man across the net was nearly perfect and never once let him turn it into chess. Now watch what that does to the theory. The thesis was never that old beats young. Read that back. It was never that experience always wins. It was something much narrower and much more honest. Elite athletes extend their careers by changing how they compete. That thesis doesn't need Djokovic to win the tournament. It just needs him to still be there. At 39, forcing the best young player in the world to be flawless to get past him, which is exactly what happened. And the two curves model, the sprint versus chess, it didn't just survive Sinner, it predicted him. Go back to the two lines. Everything Djokovic does works because his opponents are usually unfinished. Fast bodies, but decision margin still under construction. They're playing a sprint while he plays chess, and chess wins. But the model always implied one dangerous case. What happens when a young player shows up whose physical line is high and whose decision line is already high too? What happens when both curves are up at the same time? That player doesn't play a sprint you can turn into chess. He plays chess back, at full speed. That is Jannik Sinner. He is not the exception that breaks the model. He is the case the model was quietly pointing at the whole time. Youth's legs and judgment that's already most of the way to elite. When both lines are high, the aging master's edge, the one thing he had left, simply disappears. Which brings us to the part the first video didn't tell you, the uncomfortable upgrade. The second curve is not infinite. Judgment can compensate for a physical gap. It can compensate for a big one, for a shockingly long time. But it can't compensate for any gap against any opponent forever. When the physical difference is large enough and the younger player's decisions are sharp enough, there is no amount of reading the point early that closes it. Experience delays what age takes away. It was never going to guarantee a single given match. And Djokovic, of all people, knows this better than the fans do. After he lost, he didn't say it was over. He said that when he's healthy, he still believes he can compete as a top 5 player in the world. He said he hopes to come back. That's not denial. That's a man who understands his own two curves better than anyone screaming into the comments. He knows the second line is still high. He also knows it can't do everything. So now let me make this about you, because it always was. Picture the engineer at 45. She can't outcode the 25-year-old at 2 in the morning anymore. But she designs the system that doesn't break because she's watched every way it can. For years, that wins. Her judgment beats their speed. That's Djokovic against the field. Then one day, a 25-year-old walks in who codes all night and designs systems that don't break. Both curves, high. That's her Sinner. And on that project, she might lose. Not because her experience was worthless. It's the only reason she lasted this long. But because judgment alone was never a force field. Here's what you do with that. It comes down to 2 rules. First, update like a Bayesian. That just means you don't throw out everything you knew because of one new result. You start with a strong prior, 20 years of evidence, and a single bad day nudges that belief a little. It doesn't detonate it. One rough match, one failed project, one off quarter is a single data point landing on a mountain of them. People who swing from he's a god to he's finished on one afternoon aren't being observant. They're being fooled by noise. Don't do that to Djokovic, and don't do it to yourself. Second, respect the base rate, but don't assume you're the average. Almost every player in history fell apart well before 39. So statistically, Djokovic should be long gone. But a base rate describes the typical player. It doesn't describe the one out in the tail, where the ordinary rules bend. The average tells you what usually happens. The outlier tells you what's possible. Confusing the two, assuming you're average when you might be the exception, or the reverse, is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make about your own life. And then the instruction underneath all of it. You cannot win the sprint you're losing. The pure speed, the raw horsepower, the all-nighters, you might not win that race anymore. And burning yourself out trying is how you lose twice. Stop paying into the account that only shrinks. Start compounding the other one. The pattern you've seen 100 times that the person next to you is seeing for the first time. That account grows for decades, and almost nobody is deliberately paying into it. So come back to Wimbledon, the record and the loss. The 106th win and the straight sets defeat, 3 days apart. People want you to pick one. He's back or he's finished. Immortal or done. But they're the same story. He built the second curve higher than anyone ever has, and it carried him past the greatest record in the sport's history. And then he ran into a young man who had that same curve, plus the legs. And even the best judgment in tennis couldn't cover that gap. Nobody beats time. Djokovic never did. What he did was something stranger, and honestly more impressive. He made time work for its win. He forced the next generation to become extraordinary before they were allowed to replace him. Not good, not talented, extraordinary. 16 aces, 0 double faults, a nearly perfect afternoon just to get him off the court. He didn't beat time. He made time work much harder. And that second account, the one that only grows, the one almost nobody is paying into, is open for you too, at any age, starting today.